interesting notions when we do not share our empathy the same way in which we like to receive. And I think in a time of difficulty and differences in politics, right, we have to continue to challenge ourselves in difficult times to do better. Because if we don't, then we're no better than those that we pass or who doesn't meet the standards or that we pass doubt because they've shown us based on fact. So extremely important that I give that in the context of some recent examples and examples where the extremist sides do not agree. And hear that in those conversations as a community organizer, an organizer in general, when you're looking to bring about groups, craft some solutions, come up with outcomes and deliverables that all can live with, how extremely important it is to find some common ground. So here I say that to say that it's extremely important that we denounce fake news. And in that also should lead with our behavior. So not everyone likes us, me, you, or anybody else. There have always been extreme groups in an open democracy, right? So that in fact you could live by way of your beliefs, rights, and intentions. That is usually influenced in politics. And when it's influenced in politics, it has a set of deliverables and influences, whether we agree with them or not, right? And we're living in that at the moment. But it is extremely important that when we hear, see, in the spirit of how vile it is out here, right? And I do this every day, how important it is from a position of resolution, policy making, bringing people together, again, acknowledge where there is agreement. And if both sides are rocked into the extreme, then you know better. And I think that has always been a fact check by way of Godfrey. So I'm suggesting maybe in your own kind of implementation and way, you could do the same. So here I'm going to raise it because I think it's important that I've always been raised by way of my Black ancestors, right? And that then translates into my Hispanic ancestors, right? And again, I think we have some lessons to learn for you folks that are trying to solicit the Hispanic vote because you're doing it wrong. But that's another conversation. But extremely important that those groups of ancestors have always taught me that you don't engage with the person that is at the extreme and that is in extreme disagreement or who clearly doesn't like you. Fair. When I was young, it was hard as heck to get that, right? But now it is clear to me how important that is. And here goes the context. We are vilifying a group called MAGA like it ain't nobody's business. And again, they don't agree with my beliefs. I don't agree with theirs. I think that there are approaches to things that are process-driven, people-driven, empathy-driven, and to the degree of where we are living now in 2026. And for the last decade, I go, we just fundamentally disagree, right? So and it's okay. That's part of the whole conversation around politics, interest, and deliverables. So, but I say that to say, MAGA, and remember that MAGA is a group that was formed on beliefs. And a lot of people believe that Trump, or at least based on the press secretary yesterday, said that the president is the fundamental leader of MAGA and he's the author in chief and therefore he is fine. And I go, no, the group, just like anyone that understands the political discourse of America, that group has always been here. Anyone that understands the America history going pre and post Jim Crow, group has always been here. God bless that when you look at the numbers, that it's not an extreme group, but the group has always been. And here that I think it's important that when we criticize the other side, that we look at the examples in which have been either provided to us, that we either have influenced to come into this democracy that we call America. If we're not doing that, as your ancestors would say, you're not necessarily reflecting, nor are you better than. And so here I go. Do we all remember that MAGA, the ones that voted, the extreme group that I won't call them extreme. My apologies, salutations. The group that in fact disagrees with the majority of Americans, but for the political system, swayed the majority and has authored the way in which we are now living in today. They agreed on the Epstein. Now, here, they agreed on the Epstein files. They still agree on the Epstein files. And I refuse that if you understand media, mainstream, hence that they want to do away with it, I say God bless, because really there is power and obviously information and sharing, and that's been people in general. But nonetheless, the notion that MAGA went on record, got bamboozled, black and brown, y'all know this, right? We know the narrative. So here that it's important that we then understand where we agree. MAGA actually agrees, right? And we can't pull people in because we're too busy vilifying. Now, hear that I say that to say they have done it. Hear that I'm not taking nothing away from, your man's not taking nothing away from the facts that have been put out there. I would suggest to all, though, is to always look for the counter. And again, I'm not looking to invite folks to my dinner table. I'm an urban boy, right, with southern roots. See, got to on my way down to the south, right? Gotta get there. Just get this another conversation. So here that I say that why can't we bring them to the table? Because we're too busy doing the same thing. They have been the extremists in areas that we could probably factual list out, and I will agree with that. But here that I go, when do we actually say to the other side, we do agree? Here again, going back to the press secretary of the president-in-chief, just as of yesterday announced that he was the author. That's not true. We all know that. Communities are built locally. Relationships are built locally. We all don't have to agree. But when we do agree, there's power in that. And how do we then bring people to the table to be able to engage in that? Take some maturity. You got to be able to compartmentalize. Those of us that either serve, understand policy making, understand that the other side don't necessarily like you. No. Part of politics is also finding the compromise in the actual recipe. It's just a no-brainer. If not, and I think Americans been living with that for some time, other than the Joe Biden administration, right, in the last decade, right? You stalemate. We don't give credit to the Biden administration. Again, when you look at the whole totality of the democracy, the system, areas where we disagree, it was movement. Even the right moved, right? Because there was relationships built, we understood certain things. Now you got this area where there's the extreme happening, and again, we understand all of what I call the ability to distract. We all know that. Playbook's been there. So here, and as we move to the extreme, it's going to get more and more extreme. And remember, on the most extreme point of the war, and you probably didn't know, so your man's educating you, go out and Google it. I can do a whole piece on AI that is very safe, but we won't do that, but use that as well. There was the DOJ released, if you don't know, I'm telling you, they released all the redacted files of the Epstein. Came out on that like a Thursday night, slipped out. I'm watching this. I think it had to be the Celtics game when they were doing stuff. I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden, your man's into again multimedia. I love it, fact finding, and all of that. So I do tons of research when I'm rocking alone, and important aspects of development for my show and just other part of content creating and etc. Nonetheless, I think JB just got something off or whatever. It was a Thursday night. I think it was a Thursday night or a Wednesday night, whatever that game was. And here that I'm watching it because I didn't attend, and I'm like, yo, what? Now here that there was all this mass media and noise because, as you know, hearts out to Iranians, Ukrainians, Venezuelans. Okay, let me know. But the notion is that this slipped under the redacted files. that understood now that Congress got an that they had exposure to this, but now they're released. I have not reviewed, but hear that now you as the American people can, right? And here that I go more extremes, right? And then this is on the backdrop of, hey, Cuba, we'll be able to go to Cuba. Well, so I just say back to the original point, which is how do you bring in, and I come from a very diverse community in Boston. Here that you can't get no diverse in the community I come from the standpoint of racial makeup, social economics, and the extreme in that case. But there's always been a common thread when it comes to the betterment of the larger community. There were always forums and engagement, and your job was to make sure that other people got to the table because the fight is not yours alone. Never, never, never. A good organizer understands that, and you bring that in. And so, in that spirit of growing up in that neighborhood and understanding where I saw community discourse of the extreme happen between parents, ancestors, leaders, community partners, and then go to the playground. They were in my camps. Our families were in the camps. They were happy at the playgrounds together, talking different topic. There's a lot in that story and in those lessons, Mel King would say. So I say this to say that when we are engaging, remember that MAGA is its own entity. Put the blame where it needs to be. Don't get distracted and don't vilify groups that do not agree with you. Respect is what I'm going to use. Because I'm not asking you to smile in face. I'm not asking you to move on your positions, but I'm asking us to give context. Hear that we understand that when people that we disagree with and that there is some agreement, that's usually a disposition to build, not vilify. But if both sides do it, one is not right versus the other. And I go again for the sake of the ladies who were babies. Understand the democracy and all the other pieces and tangibles that are at play. Why would we do exactly what the other side? So if we, as Mama would say, Big Mama, Ma B, and Lucius would say on my side, and then Isla Mae Reed would say, hey, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't say it, but respect the differences of opinions and be respectful of those in which you have some alignment. Again, the body has not shown us any differently. I just think too many of us are distracted on all sides. So when do we bring it back? When do we bring it back? Call it what it is and lay it at the foot of the person in which. So I say that to say, let's go ahead, think greater than, don't be like those in which you are critical of. And I know that's a hard ask. Your man is not trying to sound holier than thou. And when I'm saying it to you, I'm saying it to me. So get it that this is a holistic ask to say we might need to be more native. Peace. Godfrey, P.V.P.